The cowboy carried 2 orphans across the desert, until a whisper changed everything. The sun was high in the sky, blazing over the endless desert like a golden furnace. Heat shimmered above the sand dunes, making the horizon waver as if the world itself were breathing. There, in the middle of nothing, a lone figure rode slowly, a cowboy whose name was Jack. He was tall, with broad shoulders, his coat worn and dusty from years of travel, and his hat pulled low over his face to shield him from the burning sun. His horse's hooves crunched against the dry sand, leaving a trail that the wind began to erase almost immediately. Jack had traveled these lands many times before. Breaths. He knew the desert could be cruel, unforgiving, and lonely, but it was home to him, in a way, a place where no one could judge or hurt him.
Jack's life had been a series of losses.
He had once had a family, a wife, and a little boy, but a robbery gone wrong had taken them from him years ago. Since then, he wandered from town to town, carrying only his memories and a sense of quiet sadness that he rarely let anyone see. He had learned to rely only on himself. Companionship was dangerous. Attachment was risky. And yet, there was something in him, buried deep, that still cared. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying with it a faint sound. At first, Jack thought it was just the wind whistling across the dunes, but then he heard it again, a small, weak cry, almost like a whisper. He stopped his horse, ears straining, eyes scanning the horizon. "Hello?" he called softly, his voice carried away by the wind. Silence. Breath. Then a faint whimper, followed by a sniffle. Jack frowned. He had been alone for so long that hearing another human's voice, especially one so small, made him tense. But he was also curious. He nudged his horse forward, moving toward the sound, careful not to scare whoever or whatever was out there. As he crested a dune, he saw them. 2 children, a boy and a girl, sitting on the sand, shivering despite the heat. Their clothes were torn, faces smudged with dirt, and their eyes wide with fear. They looked so small and fragile against the vastness of the desert that Jack felt an unexpected pang in his chest. The girl, who could not have been older than 8, clutched the boy's hand tightly. The boy, perhaps 10, had a small backpack, empty except for a few crumbs. Both were weak, hungry, and clearly lost. Jack's first instinct was to approach cautiously. He did not want to scare them further. "Hey there," he said gently, lifting one hand in peace. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name's Jack. Can you stand?" The girl shook her head quickly, hugging the boy closer. Don't come closer," she whispered. Her voice was small but strong, edged with fear. Jack stayed where he was, slowly lowering himself to sit on the sand a few feet away. He didn't make any sudden movements. "It's okay," he said. "I saw you from a distance. You've been out here a long time, haven't you?" The boy blinked at him, unsure if he should speak. Hunger and exhaustion made their faces pale, and the fear in their eyes was palpable. Finally, the boy whispered, We don't have water. We're lost." Rasp. Jack nodded. He had expected as much. "Okay," he said softly. "I can help with that." "I have some water. It's not much, but it's better than nothing." He reached into his saddlebag and took out a small canteen, holding it out toward them. The children hesitated, glancing at each other. Breath. The girl's lips trembled as she whispered to her brother. After a long moment, they crawled toward him slowly, trembling, and took the canteen. Jack poured some water into their hands, showing them how to drink slowly, little by little, so they wouldn't get sick. Once they had drunk, Jack spoke again, breaths. "You're safe now," he said. "I'm going to take you somewhere safe. You can ride with me. My horse is strong, and I know the desert well. You won't have to walk anymore." Narration. The children exchanged uncertain looks. Trust did not come easily to them. They had been abandoned before, and the world had shown them cruelty. But Jack's calm voice and steady presence gave them a small thread of hope. Right. Hesitantly, the boy stepped forward, and then the girl. Jack helped them onto the horse, one at a time. They held onto him tightly, fear still lingering, but a glimmer of relief appearing in their eyes. The ride was slow. Jack's horse moved carefully over the shifting sand, carrying the three of them through the endless desert. The wind still burned their skin, and the sun was relentless. But the children's small sighs of relief told Jack that they were beginning to trust him. As the afternoon passed, Jack spoke quietly, telling them stories of survival in the desert, how to find water, how to hide from the sun, and how to stay safe when the world seemed against you. Pain. He did not share his own pain. He only focused on them, giving them strength without overwhelming them. The children began to respond in small ways. The boy asked questions about the desert animals and the plants that could be eaten. The girl asked about the stars, her curiosity growing as the sun began to set. Breaths. Jack smiled quietly. They were starting to come alive again, and he felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Night fell quickly over the desert, bringing a chill that contrasted sharply with the heat of the day. Jack found a small plateau sheltered from the wind where they could rest. Built a small fire, careful to keep it low so it would not attract unwanted attention. He wrapped the children in blankets he carried and sat nearby, keeping watch. The girl leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. The boy curled up at his feet, exhausted. Jack looked up at the stars, the vast sky stretching endlessly above, and, for a moment, he felt a sense of peace. They were safe, for now. Then he heard it again. A faint whisper from the girl. Her voice was barely audible, almost a secret. Jack. Do you know Sarah? Jack froze. Sarah. That name. So familiar, yet so painful. It had been years since he had heard it, a name that belonged to a part of his past he had tried to forget. Memories he had buried came rushing back. The family he had lost, the promises he had broken, the faces he had failed to protect. His heart tightened, and he realized with a jolt that these children might be connected to someone he had loved and lost. He looked at them closely. The girl's eyes, the boy's features. They reminded him of someone he had once known. Could it be? He shook his head, trying to push the thought away. It was impossible. He had lost everything. Desk, and yet there was something in the way they spoke, in the way they looked at the world, that tugged at the deepest part of him. He spoke softly, careful not to alarm them.
You said a name, Sarah. The children nodded, wide-eyed.
Do you know her? The girl's whisper was tiny but clear. She's my mother. The boy nodded beside her. We were separated from her. Jack's mind raced. Dispute. Could this really be true? He had thought he was wandering the desert alone forever, carrying only his memories and regrets. And now, suddenly, these two children, lost, scared, fragile, were in his care. And they carried a name that meant something to him, something from a time he had never thought he would see again. He swallowed hard, keeping his voice steady. All right, he said.
We're going to be okay.
I'm here now.
I'll keep you safe no matter what. The children looked at him, their fear still there, but now mixed with a small, fragile hope. Jack realized that from this moment his life had changed. He was no longer just a cowboy wandering alone. He was a protector, a guardian, someone they could depend on. The night passed slowly, the desert quiet except for the small sounds of the children breathing and the fire crackling. Jack kept watch, thinking about the journey ahead. The desert was vast, and danger could be anywhere. But he would not let anything harm them. He had been alone for too long, and now he had a reason to fight, to protect, to care. As the first rays of dawn touched the sand, Jack looked at the children sleeping peacefully beside him. He felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. The desert was still harsh, still unforgiving, but for the first time in years, Jack felt that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for something better. A chance to make a difference, a chance to protect those who needed him most. And so, with the sun rising over the endless dunes, Jack prepared to continue their journey, carrying the two children across the desert, unaware of the challenges and revelations that awaited them, but determined to keep them safe, no matter the cost. The desert stretched endlessly as the morning sun climbed higher into the sky, burning down on the sand like a giant torch. Jack mounted his horse, gently lifting the two children, the girl and the boy, onto their small saddles. The girl's fingers still clutched his coat nervously, while the boy looked ahead, trying to keep his eyes from watering in the harsh sunlight. The desert was vast, empty, and unkind, but Jack moved steadily, confident in his knowledge of its paths, hidden oases, and safe spots. He had crossed these lands many times. But today, the journey felt different. He was no longer traveling alone. The whisper of the name, Sarah, kept echoing in Jack's mind.
It had been a lifetime ago since he had heard it, and yet it was unmistakable.
Memories he had long tried to bury surfaced unbidden. Laughter in a small town, a gentle woman with kind eyes, a home filled with warmth. Jack swallowed hard.
Could it really be a coincidence that these children had come to him? Or had fate brought them together for a reason he could not yet understand?
The children were quiet for most of the ride. Their bodies still ached from the long hours they had wandered the desert before Jack found them. The boy occasionally hiccuped from weakness, and the girl's eyes constantly scanned the dunes, wary of predators and strangers alike. Jack tried to keep the conversation light, speaking about the desert, the animals that lived there, and small survival tips of
You see those tracks?
he asked, one moment pointing to faint imprints in the sand.
That's probably a desert fox.
They travel alone and hunt small animals at night. They're clever, but they don't bother humans if left alone. The boy nodded, watching the tracks carefully. How do you know so much about the desert? He asked quietly. Jack smiled faintly. I've spent a long time here, he said. You learn a lot when you have to rely on yourself, he hesitated, then added, and when you've had some hard lessons in life. The children did not press him for more, sensing the weight in his words. As they rode, Jack kept a careful eye on the horizon. The desert could be beautiful, yes, with its golden sands and glowing sunsets, but it was also dangerous. A sandstorm could appear without warning, and temperatures could swing from scorching heat to freezing cold at night. He needed to keep the children safe. They were fragile, unprepared for the harshness of the desert, and it was his responsibility now. Past. The sun climbed higher, burning the sand into a shimmering haze. Jack noticed that the boy was growing weaker, but he urged him to sip water slowly, careful not to overdo it, while the girl's small hand gripped his coat tightly, her face pale and anxious.
Jack realized they needed rest and shelter soon or the desert would take its toll.
Late in the afternoon, they came across a small, rocky outcrop. It was not much, but it offered shade from the sun and a place to rest. Jack led the horse carefully, lowering the children to the ground. He took off his coat and wrapped it around them, using what little supplies he had to make them comfortable. Then he set about gathering small pieces of dry wood to start a fire, knowing that warmth would be needed for the night, and the smell would keep wild animals away.
As the fire crackled, the children huddled close to Jack.
The boy's voice was weak, but curious. "Jack, do you, breaths, know Sarah?" Jack's heart tightened. He sat close, careful to keep his expression neutral. I knew someone named Sarah a long time ago," he said softly. "Why do you ask?" The girl looked at him with wide, trusting eyes. She's our mother.
We got separated from her. We don't know why, but we were alone, and we were scared."
Burst. Jack swallowed hard, feeling a mix of fear and hope. Could it be? Pedestrious. Could these children actually be connected to the family he had lost so long ago? He looked at them closely, noting the small similarities. The girl's eyes, the boy's faint smile. There was something familiar. Something he could not ignore. He spoke gently, choosing his words carefully. "I don't know the full story yet, but I promise you this. I'll keep you safe. No one is going to hurt you while I'm here. I'll do everything I can to help you find your mother." The children's relief was visible but cautious. They had been betrayed by the world before, left to wander alone in a desert that offered no mercy. Trust was fragile, and they had learned to protect themselves by staying quiet, by holding back their fear. But something in Jack's calm, steady presence gave them a glimmer of hope. That night, the desert was quiet, except for the occasional howl of a distant coyote. Jack kept the fire low, watching over the children as they slept. He thought about the journey ahead. Finding their mother would not be easy. The desert was vast, towns were far apart, and dangers lurked around every corner. But he would not let that stop him. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. In the darkness, the girl stirred. She whispered again, almost inaudibly. "Jack, can you really help us find her?" Jack's voice was firm but kind. "Yes. I don't know exactly how yet, but I will. We'll do it together. You're not alone anymore." The girl's small hand found his, squeezing it briefly before she fell back into a light sleep.
The boy shifted slightly, murmuring something in his dreams. Jack watched them, a protective weight settling over him.
He had lived most of his life alone, avoiding attachments to keep himself safe. But now he realized that this was different. These children were not just travelers in the desert. They were a part of something bigger, a chance to do something meaningful, to protect life. Morning came with the soft light of dawn, painting the sand in shades of pink and gold. Jack roused the children gently. "Time to move," he said softly. "We have a long journey ahead." The boy groaned but got to his feet, holding onto Jack's hand for support. The girl wrapped the blanket around herself, still cautious but showing signs of trust. Jack helped them onto the horse and adjusted their saddles for safety. He knew that riding for long hours in the desert could be exhausting. But he would take breaks, and he would keep their spirits up with stories and encouragement. As they rode, Jack noticed the children growing more alert, more curious. The boy asked questions about the desert and the animals they might encounter. The girl asked about towns, about water, and about the stars they could see at night. Jack answered patiently, trying to teach them not only survival but also hope. Hours passed without incident, but the desert was not forgiving. The heat grew intense, the sand beneath the horse's hooves scorching. Jack kept them moving steadily, seeking any signs of shelter or water. By mid-afternoon, he spotted a distant rise in the sand, a cluster of rocks that could provide shade. He urged the horse forward carefully, his eyes scanning the horizon for dangers, both natural and human. When they reached the rocks, Jack helped the children down again. He set up a small camp, gave them water, and prepared a modest meal from what supplies he carried. They ate quietly, the silence filled with a mix of exhaustion, relief, and unspoken questions. Jack could see the girl's eyes lingering on him, studying him, trying to understand if he could be trusted. The boy was quieter, lost in thought, perhaps imagining what it would be like to see their mother again. Jack knew the road ahead would be long. The desert had already tested them with heat, hunger, and exhaustion. But he also knew that the greatest challenges were not just physical. They were emotional. The children had endured fear and abandonment, and their hearts were fragile.
He needed to show them that courage, kindness, and trust could exist, even in a harsh world.
As night fell again, Jack kept the fire low, just as he had the previous night. The desert was quiet, but Jack knew that danger could come at any time. He watched over the children, who slept more peacefully than before. Their trust was growing, even if slowly, and Jack felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had lived for years alone, hardened by loss, but now he understood that life could offer second chances, that even the loneliest heart could find purpose in protecting others. In the stillness of the night, Jack whispered to himself, "We'll find her." Desperate.
I promise. The children stirred slightly, sensing the comfort and strength in his voice. Though they did not fully understand the depth of his promise, they felt it.
And for the first time in many months, they allowed themselves to hope. The desert was still vast, the journey ahead uncertain. But together, Jack and the children faced it with determination. By 1 mile at a time, 1 mile at a time, they would travel toward hope, toward safety, and perhaps toward a family reunited.
And in the quiet of the desert night, under the endless stars, Jack knew that their lives had changed forever, and so had his.
The sun rose once more over the desert, painting the sand in pale gold and deep shadows. Jack mounted his horse, gently helping the 2 children onto their saddles. The night had been quiet, but the morning air carried a restless energy. Jack knew that traveling across the desert was never easy, and he could feel the tension in the children, even if they tried to hide it. The boy clutched the reins tightly, his knuckles white, while the girl hugged herself, her eyes darting nervously over the dunes. They had been traveling for days now. Rest. Jack had been careful to keep their pace steady, allowing the children to rest and drink when needed. Yet even with his knowledge of the desert, he could not ignore the fact that danger might be closer than it seemed. He had sensed it the previous night. A faint sound on the wind that he could not place. A whisper of movement, distant but deliberate. As they rode, the girl leaned closer to Jack, whispering, "Do you think they're still looking for us?" Jack's jaw tightened back. He had been hoping to avoid the subject, but he knew the children had lived long enough to know that danger could appear without warning. "It's possible," he said carefully. "That's why we need to stay alert. We move fast, stay quiet, and we'll be okay." The boy shifted in his saddle, eyes wide with concern. Who would want to find us? Jack hesitated. The truth was complicated. The children had been separated from their mother after a violent attack at their home. Jack didn't yet know the full story, and he didn't want to scare them further. Brave. "Some people," he said finally, "don't always do the right thing. But we'll keep moving, and we'll be safe if we're careful." The desert was a vast, unforgiving place. The sand stretched in waves, golden and blinding in the sunlight, and the wind whipped around them, carrying fine particles that stung their skin. Jack led the horse carefully, avoiding steep dunes and hidden dips where a misstep could throw them from the saddle. He knew the desert well, its oases, its rocky outcrops, and even the small animals that might betray their presence. Every step had to be calculated, every movement deliberate.
Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher.
The children grew weary, but Jack urged them to keep going. They needed to reach the next shelter before nightfall. Rest. Their water supply was low, and he knew the desert would not forgive carelessness. At one point, the boy stumbled, nearly falling from the horse. Jack caught him quickly, steadying him with a firm grip. "You're doing fine," Jack said, keeping his voice calm and reassuring. "Just a little further. You can do this." The girl looked at him, eyes filled with a mixture of fear and admiration.
You really know how to survive here, she said softly.
Jack gave a small nod.
I've had to, he said.
It's a hard place, but you learn quickly if you want to stay alive. He glanced at the horizon, scanning for any signs of movement. That's when he noticed it, a faint cloud of dust rising in the distance, too small to be natural. His heart tightened. Someone, or something, was coming. Jack slowed the horse and pointed to the dunes ahead. "We need to move carefully. Despair. Follow my lead and stay close." The children instinctively obeyed, sensing the urgency in his voice. As they rode, the dust grew, forming shapes that suggested riders. Jack's mind raced. These were not travelers. They were pursuers. People searching for the children, likely the ones responsible for separating them from their mother. He had to act fast. "Hold on," Jack said, shifting his weight to guide the horse into a hidden path he knew, a narrow passage between two rocky ridges. The children leaned forward, holding tightly as the horse moved quickly but carefully. The terrain was tricky, with loose sand and sharp rocks, but Jack knew every twist and turn. He could use the land to their advantage, staying out of sight while maintaining speed. The riders behind them were relentless, their shouts carried by the wind. Jack didn't answer. He focused on leading the children through the safest path. He could feel the horse's strength beneath him, steady and reliable, and he trusted it completely. At one point, they reached a narrow canyon. Jack guided the horse carefully, making sure the children stayed balanced. The canyon walls hid them from the pursuer's view, and for a moment, it seemed like they might escape unnoticed. But Jack knew better. The desert was open and vast, and eventually, the hunters would find another path. They had to keep moving. During a brief rest, Jack let the children drink water and eat small rations he had brought. They were exhausted, their faces pale and streaked with sweat and dust. Brash. Jack looked at them, a mix of pride and concern in his eyes. They had survived this far, but the desert and their pursuers would test them further.
You're stronger than you think, Jack said softly.
Brave. And you've been very brave, but we can't stop yet. We need to keep moving. The girl nodded, gripping his coat tightly. I don't want to be caught, she whispered. I want to see Mom again. Jack's heart ached. He had promised them safety, and now he had to deliver, no matter what it took. I'll get you there, he said firmly. Promise, but you have to trust me. They continued their journey, the canyon leading them to an open stretch of desert. The wind picked up, whipping sand into their faces, but Jack urged the horse forward. Pursuers were still behind them, visible now as dark shapes on the horizon, closing in. Jack knew the children's small strength could not withstand another confrontation. He had to be smart. He guided them toward a series of hidden dunes he knew well. From a distance, it would look like they were moving in one direction, but Jack led them in a zigzag pattern, using the terrain to throw off the pursuers. The children held on tightly, hearts pounding with fear and adrenaline. As the sun began to set, Jack spotted a small oasis in the distance, hidden behind tall sand dunes. It was a perfect place to rest, recover, and plan their next move. He urged the horse onward, careful not to reveal the oasis to anyone else. The children's faces lit up when they saw the greenery, the small pool of water, and the shade offered by a cluster of palm trees. They dismounted carefully, Jack leading them to the water first. The children drank greedily, finally letting some of their fear melt away. Jack watched them closely, noticing how their bodies relaxed slightly, their breathing becoming more even. He felt a small relief, knowing they had made it to a safe spot for now. That night, Jack set up a fire, careful to keep it hidden from view. He wrapped the children in blankets and sat close, keeping watch. The desert night was quiet, but Jack could feel the tension lingering in the air. He knew their pursuers would not give up easily, and he had to be ready. The girl leaned against him, her small hand clutching his arm. "Do you think we'll really find Mom?" she asked softly. Jack's voice was gentle, but firm.
Yes, we will.
But I don't know exactly how yet, but we'll get there. You have to believe that. The boy, still weak but determined, nodded silently. He looked at Jack with a new sense of trust and admiration. Jack realized that this journey was changing them all, teaching courage, patience, and hope. As the fire crackled and the stars shone overhead, Jack thought about the journey ahead. The desert had tested them with heat, exhaustion, and fear. But the hardest challenges were still to come. The pursuers would not give up easily, and finding their mother would require strategy, courage, and perhaps a little luck. But Jack was determined. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. These children were no longer strangers. They were under his care, and he would protect them with everything he had. The desert had been harsh and lonely for him for many years, but now it felt different. It was a place of purpose, a place where he could do something meaningful. And so, under the endless desert stars, Jack prepared for the next day's journey. He knew the challenges would be greater, the dangers closer, and the stakes higher. But he also knew that together, he and the children could face anything. They had survived the desert so far, and they would survive what was coming next. With the children asleep and the fire burning low, Jack whispered to himself, "We'll make it, but I'll keep my promise. Nothing will stop us." The desert was still vast, and the journey ahead uncertain, but one thing was clear. Jack, the boy and the girl were no longer simply travelers in the desert. They were a team, bound by trust, courage, and a shared hope of reunion. And together they would face whatever came next.
The desert was quiet that morning, a golden light spreading over the sand and casting long shadows across the dunes.
Jack mounted his horse carefully, helping the children onto theirs. Their faces showed a mixture of exhaustion and determination. They had survived so much already, but Jack knew that the hardest part of their journey was still ahead. The mother they had been seeking, the family they had lost, was within reach. But so were dangers they could not yet see. The children clutched the reins tightly, their small hands shaking slightly. The boy looked up at Jack, a mixture of fear and hope in his eyes. "Do you really think we'll see her today?" he asked quietly. Jack took a deep breath. "I don't know exactly what we'll find," he admitted. "But we'll get close. We'll stay careful, and I promise nothing will happen to you while I'm with you." The girl leaned against him for a moment, then straightened.
"We have to be brave," she said softly.
We've come this far. We can't give up now. They were learning courage, and even in their small bodies, they carried a strength he had rarely seen. He urged the horse forward, carefully leading them across the desert. He had memorized the paths that would lead them to the nearest settlement where their mother might be hiding, or held.
Every dune, every rock, every shadow mattered.
One wrong step could ruin everything. As they approached a small cluster of buildings in the distance, Jack slowed the horse and pointed to the horizon. "There," he said softly. "That's the town. That's where we might find her. But we need to be very careful. We don't know who's there or what they might do." The children's eyes widened. The boy swallowed hard, and the girl's small hand gripped his coat tightly. Jack could feel their fear, but also a spark of hope that they had not felt in a long time. They had made it this far, survived the desert, avoided danger, and now they were close. They dismounted a short distance from the town and approached on foot, staying low and quiet. Jack scanned the streets carefully, looking for signs of the mother or anyone who might have information about her. The town seemed peaceful enough at first, but Jack knew better than to trust appearances. Danger often hid in plain sight. They moved slowly, Jack leading the way, listening to every sound and watching every shadow. The girl tugged gently at his coat.
"I think I see her,"
she whispered. Jack followed her gaze and saw a woman standing near the edge of the market square. Her hair was long, dark, and slightly disheveled, her eyes scanning the crowd with desperation. Jack's heart skipped a beat. Could it really be her? The children ran toward the woman, calling out. The mother's eyes widened, and she dropped to her knees, gathering them into her arms. Tears streamed down all their faces as they held each other tightly, the years of separation melting away in an instant. Jack watched quietly, a lump in his throat. He had been part of this reunion. The protector who had carried them across the desert kept them safe from danger and led them to this moment. Seeing the joy and relief on their faces filled him with a sense of peace he had not felt in years. The mother looked at Jack, her eyes wide with gratitude.
"I don't know how to thank you,"
she said softly, voice trembling. "You saved them. You brought them back to me." Jack nodded, tipping his hat slightly. "No thanks needed," he said quietly.
"I just did what had to be done."
He felt a warmth in his chest, a satisfaction that came not from reward but from knowing he had made a difference in their lives. The family hugged tightly, and Jack stepped back slightly, giving them space while still keeping watch. The boy looked up at him, eyes shining. "Thank you, Jack," he said simply. "We wouldn't be here without you." Jack nodded again. "Now you're safe, and that's what matters." As they spoke, Jack noticed movement at the edge of the square. A group of men, likely the ones who had caused the children to be separated in the first place, were watching from a distance. Jack's instincts kicked in. He moved subtly, positioning himself so that the family was protected. The men had not noticed him fully yet, but he knew he needed to act quickly. Jack's hand went to his belt, not for a weapon, but for leverage and readiness. He knew confrontation might come, but he also knew he could outsmart them. The desert had taught him patience, strategy, and how to protect those who depended on him. He would not let these men harm the family now. The men stepped forward, but Jack's calm presence and careful positioning caused them to hesitate. He didn't speak, but his posture made it clear that he would defend the children if necessary, After a tense moment, the men exchanged glances and slowly retreated, realizing that they would not easily succeed against someone as determined and capable as Jack. With the danger momentarily gone, Jack breathed a quiet sigh of relief. The family was safe, at least for now. He turned back to them, smiling faintly. "Go on," he said. "Stay together. Don't wander alone again. Keep each other safe." The mother held her children close, nodding. "We will," she said. "Thanks to you, we're together again." She looked at Jack with deep gratitude.
You've given us something we thought we lost forever.
Jack tipped his hat again, a small gesture of humility. "Just keep each other safe," he said. "That's enough for me." The sun began to set over the town, casting long shadows and bathing the buildings in a warm golden light. Jack watched the family move toward their home, finally reunited after so many trials and hardships. He felt a strange mixture of sadness and satisfaction. Sadness because his role in their lives would soon end, but satisfaction because he had fulfilled his promise. He had carried the children across the desert, kept them safe, and brought them back to their mother. The children waved at him as they disappeared into the safety of their home. Breaths, Jack waved back, a small smile on his face. For the first time in many years, he felt a lightness he had not known since losing his own family. The desert had been harsh, lonely, and unforgiving, but it had also given him purpose. It had allowed him to protect life, teach courage, and witness a reunion that would change these children's lives forever. Jack mounted his horse and began the ride back into the desert, the stars starting to appear one by one in the darkening sky.
He rode slowly, savoring the silence and the sense of peace that came from knowing he had done the right thing.
The desert, which had once been a place of isolation and sorrow, now felt like a place of strength and meaning. As he rode, he thought about the journey, the hardships they had faced, and the courage the children had shown. He knew that life would continue to test them, but he also knew that they had learned something valuable. Hope, courage, and the power of family, even if that family had been found in unexpected ways. Jack looked up at the sky, the stars reflecting in his eyes. "Brit," he whispered softly to himself. "We made it. We all made it." Rasp. And for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of belonging, not just to the desert, but to life itself. He had carried them through the hardest part, and now they were safe, happy, and whole. The desert stretched on endlessly before him, quiet and still, and Jack rode on, ready to face whatever came next. The past had been filled with loss, but the present had given him something far more important: the chance to make a difference. And that was a journey worth taking, wherever it might lead.